Scott Kramer, this is the first time we're talking about Whitworth men's golf this fall, the 2022-23 season. The Pirates have had a couple of tournaments so far. Take us back through when you started down in California and most recently in Oregon, and tell us about the progress of this team so far this season.
Sure. So we have quite a few returners from last year, and I've added some new talent with 3 first-year student athletes. So we finished second in the California tournament last year, which we lost by, or finished second 6 strokes behind a team that went on and got third in the national championships, kind of in their home neck of the woods. So it was a great way to start off the season last year and really kind of uplifted us into a really successful fall season. So and Sam Pauly, who was a junior transfer last year, when he won that event last year, so he was defending his title. Our team had a really successful tournament that last year. So heading into that first event this year with that history, there was quite a bit of build up, and I think in some ways we put a little too much pressure on ourselves. So we had some great individual performances in that 3-round event. 2 guys shot 67s, which are fantastic golf scores. Some even par rounds in there, but ultimately we just didn't really do it at the same time. And we had a couple new guys in the field, not only in that field from the previous year, but just kind of their first times competing in college golf tournaments as part of our top 5. So we ended up in 10th place, which doesn't sound great, but we were a couple strokes out of last place after the first 36 holes. So we actually had one of the best scores of the day on the final 18 holes, which propelled us into our second event where we played down in Oregon. We shot 2 really good rounds. Whitman and Willamette are both really good golf teams this year, so it wasn't so much that we didn't do something to not win, but they just shot a little bit better scores than we did. And actually at the end of the second day with about 6 holes left, we were right in the mix, if not kind of leading the event, and there a couple birdies were made by the other teams and a couple pars were made by our team. So ultimately we finished third, but Isaac Jansen, his second time ever in the lineup, he's a junior, second time ever in our top 5, tied for medalist, and eventually a guy from Willamette won in a 4-man sudden death playoff. But Isaac was hitting some unbelievable golf shots down the stretch on some really tricky holes, including making a 12-footer in front of about 60 people where everyone knew he had to make the putt to force the playoff, and he drilled it. So really excited about the fact that we've shot some good scores, maybe haven't finished as high as we'd like, but we're getting contributions from not only kind of the old regulars that everyone comes to know as our main contributors, but also some newer guys to the lineup.
You have an interesting situation this year where you really have no idea who's going to be your lineup from week to week because you're so balanced. How are you approaching that? How are you working that out as you head into each tournament?
Right. And for those of you that may not understand, we qualify for spots. So similar to like in track, if you run these times and you're faster, then they're most likely going to be the student athlete representing Whitworth in that race, or when it's marks or meets. Well, golf scores are similar, and so our guys play throughout the weeks and days leading up to tournaments to earn their spots in the top 5, which we have 5 guys play to count 4 scores each round. And we offer some exemptions, meaning like if someone plays well in previous tournament golf, they get put through into the lineup, and then a certain amount of guys are playing for a couple spots. So far this year it has been unbelievably competitive, and this is my 6th year as the Whitworth coach. Never seen scores like this in qualifying rounds. Playing the Kalispell Club and some of the area courses, and there's guys that are shooting under par during qualifying and not making our top 5. So as disappointing as that is for the guys that aren't traveling, the competition level and kind of that iron sharpens iron concept of like you really have to play great golf just to make the trip, gives you some pretty good confidence, heading into the tournaments, that there's some guys with some really good momentum and strong play heading into the event. And when we had one guy, just a stud on our team, the sophomore Aaron Storm, 3 times he's been in a playoff for the final spot to go on a trip, and it hasn't worked out in his favor yet. He's right in the mix again with 18 more holes of qualifying for the Fall Classic coming up this weekend. I mean, just him in particular, but all the guys. If you're surviving some of that and making the trip, I mean, you're pretty confident you're going to play well in the tournament. So it's a really good problem to have as a coach with a lot of depth and a lot of talent kind of from top to bottom. I mean, there really isn't a bottom right now. So now it's just kind of finding the right mix of guys who are playing well that on that given week.
You mentioned it briefly, the Fall Classic coming up this weekend down in Salem, Oregon. It's not the end of the fall season, but it's certainly the peak of the fall season. Talk about what it means, what's at stake, and kind of give us a outlook on what are the teams to watch and where we will match up.
Sure. Yeah, so golf is divided into, we have a fall classic, a spring classic, and then the season-ending Northwest Conference Championships. And the culminating winner of those three events is who gets the automatic berth to nationals and is considered the conference champion. And so the fall classic, you basically get a point for every team that you beat in the team standings. And so really it's the one league event of the fall season, and like you mentioned, it is it's not necessarily the biggest event, but it has the most weight on where you finish in the conference race at the very end at the end of spring. So it's unique in that something that happens here in October has an impact on something that happens the third weekend in April. Pretty unique for college golf to be that way. So it's hosted by the defending Northwest Conference champions Willamette, who's also extremely good again this year on their home course. We just played Creekside Golf Club last year for the Northwest Conference Championships, where we were in the mix after the first day and kind of fell back on the second day when the pressure got applied to us a little bit. So we know the course, we know the people we're playing against. Whitman has the exact same roster as last year, and they were very, very talented in the fall and dropped off a bit in the spring. They're back to their fall form from last year. Willamette has everybody back except for a couple-time All-American, but they've replaced him with some outstanding freshmen. So Whitman and Willamette are basically the same roster, and we're playing on Willamette's home course. The Whitman boys played that course just months ago in the conference championship. So those are us, Whitman and Willamette, I would say would be kind of the favorites to contend to win this, but George Fox and PLU and Pacific all have some players that have been shooting some good rounds. So I'm anticipating some extremely low scores barring good weather. And when I looked at the weather, it's supposed to be between like 83 and 85, which is just insane to be in Oregon as we're approaching the middle of October to be playing in that type of weather. Usually we're talking about it being rainy and cold and stuff like that. So high temperatures, I anticipate some low scores from a variety of people. And as far as the individual race, there's probably about 15 to 20 golfers that could contend to win the individual title. Whereas in years past, that talent has been very high at the top end. But you go into a tournament thinking there's probably 6 or 8 guys. I mean, I literally believe that there's like 15 different people that could win this tournament individually. So we have to play really well. There's no doubt about it. If we want to win this, which would have significant impact on our postseason hopes at the end of April, that playing well here in a couple days would strongly put us in a good position. And no one is going to allow that to happen for us. We're literally going to have to go out and shoot some really good golf scores.